That's what I'm talking about.
Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.
Welcome to the Muscle, Mind, and Money Podcast. I am one of your hosts. My name is Dominic.
And this is Nastasia. Now on to the show. We're back and we're better than ever. Hey everybody, it's Nastasia and I am coming to you today with a podcast that I recorded a few months ago. I had the honor of being interviewed by Logan Dube. And in this interview, we talk about my adventurous spirit of taking a leap of faith to move to Canada from the US along with Dominic and what that adventure led us to. Our risk, our reward, our challenges, and also the importance of having grit and working through adversity to take yourself to the top. I love this episode. It was awesome to be on the other side of the mic, and I hope that you enjoy listening as well. Here we go.
All right. Awesome. This is, I'm going to call this number 2 of my little series here. So I'm sure you guys all know this beautiful face. I'm here with Nastasia. And we're just gonna chat. It was funny. We were chatting ahead of time about, well, what are we going to talk about? And I just said like, hey, this isn't like a work thing. This is like a fun conversation. This is curiosity driven. So, we have a few ideas about some things that we want to talk about, but mostly, we just want to have a fun conversation, get into some stuff that maybe doesn't really seem like the kind of thing that you would see her and I talking about usually. So good morning, good afternoon.
Hello. Who even knows what time it is when you're quarantined? Every day's the weekend and it's like the morning, afternoon. Thanks for having me.
And who knows what time people will be watching this, because that's the benefit of like saving stuff. You could be watching it whenever.
Crazy times, but thank God for technology so we can still see each other's faces and talk, and then maybe talk to more people in the world too.
For sure. So thank you for, doing this. I know you've got a bunch of stuff going on right now. Obviously, there's a lot of us that are big fans of your podcast and you're doing all kinds of amazing things. So I think it's really cool to be able to kind of turn the tables and be willing to let me kind of ask some questions and lead the way a little bit. This is really just this is just a fun project for me. And as I was saying to you earlier, like I've been I feel like I'm over aware of being productive. Like I'm working from home, but I still really want to do like a good job. I want to be responsible. I want to support and serve, my team as best I can. And I start noticing that like, I kind of like start spiraling and I sort of feel like I'm now not doing my best work because I'm a little bit overwhelmed or I'm going a little bit squirrely. So, this was just an opportunity for me to sort of have these little reset moments through my day and potentially offer that up to other people as well. I think I'm really lucky that I know a ton of really cool people that have accomplished a lot of things. And we can learn so much from just how people are making choices and navigating their lives. So I think for sure you are one of those people on my list. So it's going to be fun to be able to just, have a conversation about some stuff. So I wanted to kick it off to you for people who do or don't know. You and I met about it's called 7 years ago. You did an awesome interview with me. You didn't let me leave until I agreed to be on your team. And so we started off, working together, but that came about because you had moved somewhere and I had moved back from somewhere. So what I wanted to ask you about, was just maybe a little bit of the story. And also like, what did you learn from taking a big leap, moving, to another country, starting, kind of over, like you were in the same industry, but like, I just wanted to learn a little bit more about that. Cause I already met you at the point where you'd made your decision and you were plugged in and you were going. So I thought it might be cool to explore that a little bit.
It's crazy. It's been that long, but we met when I had been here in Canada for like a year, I think it was like half a year. You're right. It was towards the beginning, but the whole story that comes from prior to that, my husband and I, Dominic and I both worked in the fitness industry in the States. And Dominic had kept connection with one of his old bosses, his district manager at the time. And this opportunity came up to move to Canada. And if anybody knows me, I'm like not leaving my family, and I am not leaving Colorado. I went to college about 20 minutes away from the house that I grew up in. And this was like a way far no-go. I was like, yeah, this isn't even like an option. And at the time, the district manager who ended up being our employer in Canada had called Dominic, and Dominic was more of like a little bit more adventurous and was like entertaining the thought, but I was on the other side of the scale. And so to get me to come on the recruiting trip, Dominic was like, let's just go on a vacation to Vancouver. So if you tell me vacation and anywhere other than Colorado, like I'm in. So they knew how to hook me, which is how we even just ended up coming on this trip to see the city and to see the opportunity at that time of what was Steve Nash Clubs. And so that was the beginning of the kind of journey. And so we got on an airplane. At that time, I really loved my boss. I loved my job. I was on a succession plan to get promoted. There was like no logical reason really for either of us to leave where we were at. So I really looked at it like we're just going to take a vacation up to Vancouver. Like fucking why not? It's all free. Oops. I said a bad word. Is that okay?
Wait, no, this is all about being authentic. I love it.
We're not going to get through this without a few F-bombs. So we came on this quote unquote vacation recruiting trip and to see really what the city was and kind of to like hang out with our old boss. So that's like how it all went down. So we are on this like tiny commuter plane. It's like 2 seats and 2 seats. And because it's a recruiting trip, they flew us first class. But unfortunately, because the plane was so small, first class just meant like the second row of this tiny commuter plane. But still, whatever, it was cool. And we got put up in not a fancy hotel, but it was right next to the head office. And we landed, and our old boss came to pick us up, who is you guys, I'm sure a lot of you are watching, who's Chris Smith. And we like hit the ground running, visiting health clubs. So really my vacation wasn't actually a vacation. We went to all these clubs. We saw the good, bad, and the ugly. And Chris is a really good salesperson. So like, I feel like halfway through the first day, I had turned from like hard no chance in hell to like, listen. Like that's kind of where I got to. And then we stayed the second day, and then we stayed the third day. We did end up seeing some of the city. And the way the story goes is on the very last day, now I'm like, okay, I really have enjoyed the people that we've met in the clubs that we've gone to. The city was so beautiful. It happened to be sunny for those 3 days. Like, I think it was like a September. So like the universe was clearly working for us to take this opportunity. Because if you guys don't know, Vancouver's super shitty and rainy and like the weather sucks, but it didn't suck for us for those 3 days. And so Chris drives us around Stanley Park, and we stop at this lookout, which is right by that place that you can get the tea house, you know, that like really nice lookout. And there's some benches. And so we're sitting down, and really this was a recruiting trip for my husband, because for my husband, this was going to be a advancement in a job title. But for me, there wasn't that opportunity. I was actually going to have to go backwards to a job that I had done like 3 years prior. So for him, he was going to get a promotion. And for me, I was going to have to take a demotion. When in reality, the trajectory path that I was on with our current employer, like I was ready to get promoted. So like none of it made logical sense outside of it serving one of the two people, like from a career standpoint. So we're sitting on this bench, and I'm just crying And I'm like, I don't know what to do. And the two guys are like looking over my shoulder because at this point, Dominic wants to come. Chris, I think, wanted us here. And like, I'm going to be this deciding factor, like having a full-on meltdown in the middle of Stanley Park, sitting on this bench, just like crying. I don't even know what I'm saying. I'm like, I'm going to get a demotion, and my mom and my dad and my dog. And how are we going to do this? Like, just a mess. So we get back into the car and we're still like not committed, undecided. And also, I don't know genuinely if Chris wants us. Like, this is also like the two things have to match and marry each other. And so I don't even know what he's thinking about us, and I'm super confused. Anyway, so we get on an airplane later that evening, and it's that same commuter plane in first class. This time we were like in the first row. And Dominic's like, okay, so what do you want to do? And I look at him, and no joke. I don't even know, Logan, if I've told you this story. This is how the decision was made. So we're flying now back to Colorado, where I have lived my entire life. I own a condo in downtown Denver. Dominic was a little more adventurous and went away for college and then came back. But like, I haven't, outside of studying abroad in London for 6 months in college, like I have not left that city or that state or that town. Like, I'm still friends with my high school friends, which is super rare. And so we're flying home, and he's like, okay, so what do you want to do? And clearly he wants to come. Okay. Like, he wants to go. And I looked at him and I was like, fuck it. Let's do it. And he was like, no, like, seriously. I'm like, fuck it. Let's just do it. And literally right there, that's how the decision was made to move to Canada.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that story, because I literally, as you were saying it, I was literally saying, fuck it, let's do it, because I knew that was coming. So that's awesome. So, I mean, having known that part of the story, I think that's when I was thinking about like, hey, what do I want to talk to Nastasia about? I think that's kind of where I lit on a connection that we've never really had a chance to explore, but I think that was really cool. You kind of just took this big leap and you went, and like, obviously we sort of know how it worked out. Like, it ended up working out pretty great. Yeah. And like, I think I'm a little bit more on Dominic's side of the story. Like, when I was going through high school, I was playing on 5 soccer teams and training hours a day. Like, I knew I was going, and it was just a matter of where I was going to land. But I ended up going to the US for school. So I went in the opposite direction. And so like, I've always thought that taking that big leap is really beneficial for like your personal development. Like, yeah, sure, there's always going to be some kind of opportunity, professional or otherwise, but like literally just making that jump, like kind of learning that you can leave behind everything you know and make it. To me, that's like, that's almost like it's like a rite of passage. Like if you look at fiction and you talk about the hero story arc or whatever, like leaving home and starting from scratch is like a thing that some people do and some people don't. Yeah. The parallel for me, or what was interesting, is like, I knew I was going, I left. I call my university career successful. I had a lot of success, and I graduated, and we won a lot of games, and my sort of professional sport career like peaked in my university experience. And I look back to that time as I had like a goal and a vision in mind, but I also showed up at a place that had a pretty incredible structure in place. Like, I was in school, I was at practice, I lived in the dorms, people cooked my food for me, I had study table, I was given a job. Like, I had a ton of support, and I absolutely know that's part of why I was successful. Fast forward 4 years past that, and now I go to try out for Liverpool FC in the UK, which in my mind was just going to be the same thing again. Like, I was leaving behind what I knew, but I was going like, here's where I'm landing. I'm going to go play. It's the next step up in my career. So like, I had this idea that like, I'm good at the leap of faith thing, and I'm going to nail it. And then I got there, and it was a wildly different experience from what landing at university had been, where university had a ton of structure and support. This was nothing. Like, I flew into the airport. I had to find my own train. I had to get to the city I needed to be in. I had to find my own hotel. I had to make my way to practice. Whereas like, when I was at university, someone picked me up, drove me to the dorm, took me to Target, bought me a fridge. Like, I didn't realize the support that I'd had that helped me be successful. So ultimately, where the opportunity to play for Liverpool wasn't what I thought it was going to be, like it just wasn't a step up. I also look at the fact that in the absence of any structure, I didn't have the ability to create structure for myself. I didn't know how important that was. Mm-hmm. And so I don't necessarily look at it as a failure. I sort of see like both sides lost out. I didn't get to have that opportunity. They didn't get to, have me as a player on the team. But it was really cool to sort of compare those two things. So I don't know if any of what I said like sparks thoughts in your head, but what I kind of was curious about is, we know how the story ended. It ended up being a wildly successful move for you. But what are some of the things that you think helped make that successful? Was it your mental mindset? Was it doing it with a partner? Was it stepping into a structure where there was some familiar? Like, what do you think were the conditions that made that leap work out?
So for me, I think that there's different personalities of people to where taking adventure and taking a risk is really easy for some people. That's my dad. Like he's very lighthearted. Him and my mom moved countries, lived all over the world. And for him, it was fun. For me, it's scary. It's the unknown. It's the lack of structure, to your point, that almost paralyzes me to not make that. It's not part of my personality. I'm much more of a person that I like the known. I like the routine. I like the security. At that time, thinking about being an entrepreneur was very scary because I wouldn't be guaranteed a paycheck every 2 weeks. So in my personality, it's not something that comes easy to take these leaps or to just naturally be adventurous. But I'm married to somebody who is much more like, let's go, let's try, let's adventure. So it's kind of this like yin and yang. So honestly, Logan, like if it wasn't for Dominic, I don't know if I would have taken that initial leap. And I don't know if I did take the leap, I'm not sure I would have stayed. So there is an element to having your confidence boosted when you're with somebody that has great confidence and this kind of spirit to like, just go try. So a lot of what Dominic and I built in Canada, I think is attributed to us doing it as a pair, but that may not be you and your situation, right? There's still independent learnings of this though, around taking leaps and going for it. So when we got on that airplane and I had decided, fuck it, let's go, this was what went through my head. I was like, okay, is the security of safety, because that's where I was at, like living in the same house, living in the same city, doing this really like guaranteed job. Is the security of this safety more worth than potentially missing out on something that could be greater? Because like if we didn't know how this was going to end up, it could have been a total flop. It could have been a giant mess. To give you a small perspective, and this is pretty personal, we were both taking a giant pay cut on our guaranteed earnings and a huge opportunity on a variable earning. So it was like you could make 3 times more, but you're guaranteed to make about 40% less. And if you think of that logically, you'd never fucking take that. That doesn't even sound like an opportunity. But if you flip your perspective and say, but it could be an opportunity. We're going to get to learn more. We're going to get to work more closely on a ground level. We're going to get to be higher decision makers. There's more upside of growth. And so if you say, is my security of the safety more worth it than this potential of what could be? And that's where I couldn't sell myself on that anymore. I was like, no. So like, okay, I'm guaranteed this thing over here, but it comes with a limitation and it comes with a cap. Or I have this thing over here that doesn't guarantee me much, but here's the difference. You got to bet on yourself. And when I really started to look and say, well, if I'm betting on me and I'm betting on Dominic and I'm betting us together, then what the fuck? We're going to maximize this and it's going to end up great. where I can't have that opportunity if I just stay put. So that's where, to me, logically, it started to make sense around taking that risk, even though it was scary. So in life, I feel like that first leap, that first big leap is the one that's going to teach you the lessons. And now we both feel like we can do anything. Like, it doesn't matter. We did Canada. We made it. We stayed. We had really successful careers. And now we're like, oh, we can do anything. So for a lot of you, if you're like watching and you haven't taken your first big leap, whether that's like Logan, moving, I mean, you moved to another country to go to school and then another country to go play soccer again. Like, you've done your leaps and now you've moved across Canada. And like, I would venture to say, would you agree, like, those subsequent moves were easier? Because like, you had already taken your first big leap.
Yeah, and that's even what I was going to say. When I say I don't really consider Liverpool to have ended up a failure, I don't think it was, because at that point, I both learned that I can leap and be successful, but also that I can leap. It doesn't work out the way I think it's going to, and I'm still okay. So like,
yeah.
I've had the benefit of sort of both sides of that equation. But the idea is that if you bet on yourself and you take a chance,
yeah,
you are automatically going to learn something. Like, you're probably going to learn a ton. You're going to be challenged in ways that you never expected. It's going to be better than you thought it would be. It's going to be harder than you thought it would be. But ultimately, like, you just start to learn that betting on yourself is kind of like a sure bet. Like, you're going to figure it out as long as you're a little bit flexible and you're a little bit like just kind of willing to roll with what happens. You're going to be able to find that way forward.
Yeah, because you're like forcing yourself into a situation where you're like up against the wall to like, you have no other choice but to figure it out. Even if figuring it out means that you switch jobs or you go back home or you stay and you tough it out, whatever that looks like in that first big leap, you're going to be challenged no matter what to be up against the wall to figure it out. Like a story that I always share, because we were taking such big pay cuts. We lived in a hotel for the whole first month that we had moved to Canada because the move was super fast. We didn't have anywhere to live. We didn't have a house locked down. It was so fucking irrational. Like, now when I look back on it, I'm like, how did I even agree to this? And thank God I did. But I mean, there's crazy things that happen, but we stayed humble. We stayed hungry. We put our heads down and did the work that we needed to do. And everything grew from there because we knew that we had to figure it out. And so in taking this huge pay cut and not having a place to live, like, we would go out to dinner because we couldn't, like, our hotel room didn't have a kitchen even. And I would tell Dominic, like, we can't order Diet Cokes, only water, because we don't know how much money we're going to make. And like, who knows if this is going to work? But you know what? Like, we laugh about it now, but that taught us a lot of things about budgeting and about finances and about the things that we really needed versus the things that we wanted. And that changed a perspective on that. So even those small experiences, like, but in making something I want to talk about, like in making that fuck it moment decision on the airplane and coming here, it literally was like following an instinct. And in order for you to hear those instincts and those whispers and to place yourself in situations to be given opportunity and for you to even see it, like, you've got to be looking around and following your gut. So this whole decision was made literally off of no logic and off of all instinct and trust in somebody that we had been networked with, that we had a very good relationship and a loyal relationship with, that like, hey, you're calling on me and we're willing to listen to this opportunity because we've stayed connected. And at the end of the day, after those 3 days were done, like, there wasn't much logic in it. It just was like, it feels right. So fuck it. We're going to go give it a shot. And I think there's something to be said. We weren't looking for this opportunity. So right now we're like in the middle of this quarantine. We have this like world thing going on. We have no idea how it's going to end. Some people don't know if they're going to have jobs or not. Some people are working from home and they know they're going to have jobs, but we were noticing opportunity even when things were going fine. Like, we didn't need the job. So I think that that's something that is a really good learning lesson when you're talking about taking leaps and you're talking about adventuring and taking risks. Like, those risks aren't going to feel right if you're only looking at them and seeking them out when you're already like in the shitter. Meaning, like, you go try to move countries or you got laid off. Like, those opportunities are going to come to you as real and as like whole as they are, even when things are going good. And I feel like when we made that decision on the plane that day, it was the right decision because we weren't doing it out of desperation. Like, we didn't need to come here. We didn't need this job. We didn't need any of this. We were fine. But the way that it all worked out and taking this big leap when things were going well, I think is a huge reason of why it worked out so well. Because like, we didn't need it. We wanted it. We saw that there was opportunity. We saw something larger that we could take advantage of, and then we went for it.
So I know that at this point, because I mean, you guys have learned a lot and you pursue personal development almost as aggressively, if not more, than your professional development. So I know if I said to you, like, today, right now, what are your deep values? What is your vision? What's really meaningful to you in life? I know you'd have an answer now. That's like, there's probably a vision board like over your left-hand shoulder. But do you think that back then you might not have had as clear a sense, but do you think you still had, like, when you talk about following your gut and like using your instinct and whatever, do you think you still had a sense of when something feels right because it matches what's important to you? Do you think you would have been able to recognize that back then?
Yeah, honestly, like a big part of why I can sense to coming here was because of people that we met in those 3 days. I really loved the people. I will be very vulnerable in admitting that in the course of moving up in my career and having great success and making a lot of money, there was a point where it changed more to profits. But that's also then when I started to become the most unhappy and unfulfilled in my job, was when it turned into money. And it's this ironic thing. It was like, initially there was no guarantee of money and it was all about the people. That whole vision and that focus got me to the pinnacle of my career where I was making the most money. And then it's very easy to get swooped into a trap as you make money, it becoming more about money. And also as you move up as an executive, that, I mean, it's the reality of the situation. You're looking at numbers and money all the time, to where I think that's where I lost sight. And now I've refocused to understand that, like, everything in this life is all about people. It's like the whole reason we came here was about people and about the person helping us get here. And so I think it was a really good recentering to have some things go on personally to get back to that point. But I would say that that's what got us here, but that's also what got me to the most success that I've ever had. And it's also where my heart and where my core, at the end of the day, this life is all about the people you're connected to, the people you're helping, the people you're networking with, the people you're helping grow and develop, like whatever that looks like for you, your family, your relationship, your friendships, like that's what it's all about. So if you can figure out how to transfer that into your job, which I think is, like I said, what brought us here, trusting the person that we were going to work for, and then loving the people that we met along the way, which is ultimately for me, the like most fulfilling and always like the North Star to anything that I do. And then doing it with the person that I did it with, which is my husband, and getting to do that together, which is an awesome experience of that. And we're kind of unique in the sense that we can work together and still love to be married.
That's saying something for sure. So as you were talking about that, I kind of have like a little mini aha moment in my brain. So I don't know if I'm going to express this like as eloquently as I could, but what I'm picking up from you is that, like, you're saying one of your big driving instincts is people. And I I can attest to that firsthand because, you know, I joke around that you hard closed me in an interview, but like one of the reasons why I took what I do and got on board with your team to do it is because of the people connection. So I can totally see that for you. At the same time, what it's bringing up for me is when I think about, you know, I've moved big chunks of land at a time, multiple times. Like the number of times I've gotten rid of all of my stuff and packed whatever fits into my trunk and moved is pretty high. But one of the, when you're saying your big driving force is people, what's coming up for me is like what I'm seeking and what I'm moving towards is like growth. It's transformation. And I love to learn and I love knowing things. And I love that when I experience things I've never experienced before, it teaches me something. I like challenging myself so that I have to learn something in order to navigate it. So what I like, and it's actually kind of funny because you and I are very different people, but we work together really well. Mm-hmm. So where you're people driven, maybe I'm growth driven, but one of the things that I've learned is one of the best ways to grow is to learn from people or to put yourself in a position where somebody creates an experience or pushes you or, you know, like partners with you in your growth. Like ultimately, I believe you have to be willing to do it. Like when you take a big leap and you're betting on yourself, you have to be willing to do a lot of it. But the sense of independence is not the same as doing it on your own or being alone. So the sort of the thing that I've looked at in being successful or not is that you win or you grow, you win or you learn in either direction. And so that for me has been one of the things that keeps me seeking like change or experience or whatever. So I know that you and I have talked about growth mindset too. So for me to kind of like be like highlighting on this, it sort of throws back to a lot of the stuff you guys have been talking about in your awesome podcast. In terms of staying like inspired and engaged and like sort of pursuing that growth mindset, which when you change something can be hard to do because now all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I don't know what's happening and I'm scared. What are some of the things that you do or that you have been able to, some of the strategies that you've used to put yourself into that mindset where you can bet on yourself, you can take a leap, you're chasing growth, like you're afraid, but you're doing it anyway. What would you say about that?
So honestly, for me, I'm just fiercely competitive, Logan, just like you are. Like I want to be at the top. I want to get there faster. I want to be number one. I want to be the best. Like I'll do stuff when I'm not even asked to do it. I'll do stuff for free. And these are just things that I think were embedded in me from a younger age. And then I carried throughout my career. And those are the things that got me to excel faster and quicker than anyone else. Like I am happy to work for free if I can learn. And I'm not at all like, I was never an assistant manager because there was a guy holding the spot. When I was a trainer, I wanted to be the assistant. He was like a lifelonger assistant and I was never going to get to be an assistant, but to be a full-on manager and run your own team, you had to be an assistant. So like some people could take that and just put their legs up and say, well, I guess I'll never get there. I went to my boss and I was like, cool. I don't even need a name tag. I don't even need pay. Give me that guy's fucking job. I'll do it. I'll do it better. And then I'll get promoted. And I haven't shared that story a lot because it's not that I'm embarrassed about it. It's just it's not very common that I skipped a grade, but I didn't really. I just volunteered to do it without getting paid to get the experience so I could excel. And I think that in this day and age, that's a really rare thing. That's a rare mindset. Like we always talk about go get education or go get your master's degree or go read a fucking book or go listen to a podcast. Like, how about go do the work? Go do the work. And whether you're getting paid for it or not, it's gonna always pay you back. I became a vice president of a more than $20 million business at the age of, how old was I? I don't even know, Logan, 32, 33, without a degree in this field, without having past experience, in less than like less than 7 years of working in the industry. But guess what? I did the work. I did the work for free a lot of fucking times. I did 2 people's jobs for the price of 1 a lot of times. But it got me to where I got exponentially quicker and exponentially more successfully financially than had I waited to sit on my ass for somebody to give me a name tag or to open the door for me to walk through. So like that's a big thing for me challenging to grow. Of course, yes, read books. Of course, yes, listen to podcasts, but those are like the no-brainers. Like to me, if you're not doing that and you're not constantly trying to self-develop yourself, then I mean, don't expect much in return. But the more unspoken things are like that I did the whole job without a name tag and without the paycheck because that's how fucking bad I wanted it. That's like the guy going to the basketball court at 5 a.m. instead of 7 a.m. because that's how bad he wants it. The guy staying later at work to figure out the issue or to innovate a new thing that the CEO's been wanting, even though nothing was ever asked of him. So like when we talk about the challenge to grow, like that's got to come from inside you. And to me, it's been, I don't know, I think it came from that. It's more because I'm competitive than, oh, I want to go learn. Because then I would have like had a PhD by now. Like when I finished university, I never wanted to go get another degree. I was like, get me in the work field and let me go to work. So that's a big thing for me. And I'd be lying to say like, there are plenty of times, this is my second about challenging to grow. This is it. And listen carefully. I have wanted to quit so many times, just like you, just like anybody that's watching. Nobody's trajectory to success just goes like this. From the outside, it might have looked like my success went like this, but it fucking didn't. There were so many times that I wanted to move back home. There were so many times when I worked in this huge organization in a lower position where I hired Logan that I wanted to fucking quit. I would go home crying, literally when we worked together every day, going to my husband saying, that's it. I'm just going to be a trainer and let's get a dog and I'll raise the dog and be a trainer. I wanted to quit so bad. But I think the degree of difference around the challenge to grow is, can you make it through the shitty fucking times? And it just drives me bonkers when I sit in front of one of our ex-employees that are now ex-employees, and on the exit interview, I am talking to them about, why are you quitting? And they're really quitting, really, not what they're telling us, but they're really quitting because it was fucking hard. They'll frame it up to me like, oh, I'm not making money. Oh, I'm not, oh, my life at home with my family. Oh, my this, oh, my that. But really, when it comes down to it, you're quitting because it's hard. And then where do those people end up, Logan? So we quit. We quit when we're like here in our success line. Okay. We go back to where? All the way back to fucking square one. And because that person didn't learn the challenge to grow and the grit to not quit when they got here, when they get here again in their new job, what do? They fucking quit again. And then you're in this rat race that you're always going back to the beginning where you're comfortable and it's easy and you feel good and you can't ever get past this, like this breaking point. But I've been broken, man. I've come home crying. I've moved fucking countries. I've lost a fucking parent. I have another parent who's terminally ill in a nursing home. I broke and I broke and I broke again. But I just feel like the difference is that I stayed the course and I didn't quit. Because at that time that you and I were working together on a daily, like that's where I was at the breaking point. I could have quit right there. 3 years later, I was a VP. From that moment. So I just think that in this growth mindset, you have to understand that you have to change the course. And on the other side of your greatest challenges, where you just feel like you're never going to make it through, if you can stick it out to make it through, you're not just going to make it through. That's where you start to do like this with your finances, your career, whatever. But just the difference is People don't fucking tough it out to get past that point. And so they're always going backwards and starting back at the beginning. And that's why there's me's. It's a small percent that actually go like this, a small percent that can actually be successful entrepreneurs, successful in a big corporate chain, successful in whatever you're doing, is because like you just had the grit to make it through the shit. So like those are my two things.
I love it. One of those is legit a hashtag. I made a note, the grit to not quit, but that's
the grit to not quit.
Grit to not quit.
That's it. I mean, and even if you're watching this right now, go back in your life and think about how many times you didn't have the grit and you did quit. In my life, it's very, very few. It literally is few. And the things that I quit by choice because I didn't fucking like it, or there was something better. Like I was moving like forward, right? I was moving forward. So yes, I did quit my job at 24 Hour Fitness, but I didn't quit because it was too hard or I was failing or it was uncomfortable. I quit because this other door opened to move into that, right? I'm talking about when you quit to go backwards. Oh, that is my biggest frustration with people, especially people with talent. It's because like you can have all the talent and education in the world, but if you can't make it through shitty times, and a lot of us are in shitty times right fucking now. Like it's a shitty time right now. Are you going to make it through? Do you have the grit not to quit? And right now you're up against a wall that you're going to have to figure out how to move forward. You're going to have to get innovative. You're going to have to create. You're going to have to start video chats. You're going to have to go do things that are uncomfortable because as a universe, you're being pushed to go do that. So are you going to make it through? Do you have the grit? And that's it. I don't think that I'm more special. I'm definitely not more educated. I'm definitely I didn't grow up with a silver spoon and I don't have a freaking trust fund. I don't know. I'm just like you. Just the difference is when I wanted to quit, I didn't.
I think that's really awesome because, I mean, you know, when you and I work together in fitness, there's obviously a lot of that. Like that's something that we see all the time. People sign up for a gym membership and then they stop coming. They try to lose weight and then they give up. You know what I mean? Like we see it all the time. And it's really that change by itself, any kind of change is hard. Like our biological brain wants things to stay the same because that's safe and predictable and it can do what it has to do to help us survive. So like we're actually fighting against some pretty strong biology when we try to make a change. Mm-hmm. And I think when you do something like move to another country, that forced change, kind of like what I've noticed, same as when I travel to a place, like say I don't know the language, I get into this state of like, kind of like calm. Cause like, I don't have any answers. I don't know what you're saying. I don't know where I'm going to be tonight. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And what I find is that for me, I just go like quiet and I start to observe and I start to like get resourceful and I figure it out. I also understand that there's people whose initial reaction in that experience would be like high anxiety. So like when you said there's different personality types, sure, I can totally see that. But this idea of you're talking about it from the perspective of success in your career, we could literally apply it to anything. This idea that we have a pattern of how we act and it's uncomfortable to change that. So we keep going through the cycle the same way we always have it. And realistically, the opportunity to change that, you could look at it in work, you could look at it in relationships, you could look at it in how you have established your lifestyle, what your habits are. Like we get into needing things to be simpler so they don't take so much brain power. We get into this cycle. The thing that's actually going to break that is something that takes a lot of energy. It takes a big push. So I guess sort of what I started off this whole conversation to be about was like in support of taking that big leap, because it creates the opportunity for that cycle to just be burst wide open. And then you have a chance to start over and you have a chance to look at doing things differently. Right. So that was cool. Thank you. You definitely said some things. I mean, I'm familiar with your story, having been part of it for a while, but I also think it's cool to be able to look back on having, gone through that, and for you to have some perspective that that's a little bit different, and to be able to share some lessons from that. So that's really cool. I can say on my own end, having worked with you like pretty closely for, I mean, literally daily, we saw each other for almost 2 years. From my side of things, you showed up every morning passionate, with your hair on fire, because you had shit to do and you were going to change the world, and you just kind of went nonstop all day long. So like, it doesn't surprise me that you drove home and you were frustrated and you were bawling sometimes, but like, it also never looked like that from the outside. So I guess that's another way to say to people like, hey, you might feel like you're failing, or you might feel like you're having a hard time, but that doesn't necessarily have to be what it looks like. I think of the time that I worked with you as like nonstop. I was being pushed to give my best all the time, because you were giving your best all the time. Like, that's what it looked like to me. You accepted no excuses, nothing less than our best. And like, I felt like we were making constant forward progress. Sometimes that was exhausting, but it was ultimately super rewarding. And so from my side of things, like, you looked like you had your shit together. Like, you looked like you had a plan and you knew what you were doing. And like, I just put my faith in that vision and like put my head down and did whatever I could to like help move our team to where we wanted to be. So I guess the other thing to say is like, you might feel like you're falling apart, but you never know who you're inspiring and who you're helping and who you're driving. And like, the fact that you might feel like you're alone and trying to make some changes happen, but when you share your vision with people, there's other people working on the success that you're trying to achieve, even though you might not be able to see it because you're stuck staring at what the problems are.
Yeah. And now in my wiser years and having been through some hard shit personally, I think that I would look at it a little bit different in those challenging times, to give yourself grace and patience and be okay with things taking time. So however you're grading yourself on success, sometimes the work that you're doing today so diligently may not show up as that form of success that you're thinking of in the time, like immediately. And for me, that was part of the frustration. Like, I felt like I was working so hard and working so much and just not getting the result, because the way the result was being graded by myself was strictly from a financial standpoint, where now I would look at it and say, I'm going to trust in the universe meeting me. If I'm outputting all of this effort and doing all these good things for these people and really doing things out of my heart for the right reason, at some point, it's going to meet me, right? Like, you're always going to be met with your energy that you put out. At some point, it will meet you. And it didn't just meet me, it like exploded, right? And it literally, I mean, it's so funny to talk about, because it was months that you and I were diligently working during this really hard time that I was going home and crying and wanting to quit. And then all of a sudden, do you remember it like flipped a switch? It was like March or April. And like all of a sudden it like all came together and it all worked and it was all successful. And then it was all like, whoo, up from there. So when I talk about this whole thing of like not giving up and not quitting, what if tomorrow is that day that the universe is going to meet you for all that effort that you put in and you quit today? So it's like, I think that sometimes we live in this society that we just want shit right away. Like, we worked out for one day and now I'm like, why can I still not button my pants tomorrow? Well, that you have to take the time and you have to put in the effort, but that's also where the lessons are. That's where the lessons come from, is that time that you were doing the work and not getting the return. It's not from when you struck it rich, right? It was from the humbling times that you were learning that lesson, that sometimes you don't get a reward right away, but like, you got to trust that it's always going to come. If you're doing things for the right reason and the right way and out of the right place, it always is going to pay you back. And these are things that, like, it's not a talent. It's more of like learning the skill set of being adaptable, being like adapt to change, be able to pivot, be able to stay patient, be able to stay the course. And when you see an opportunity, don't let fear be the reason why you didn't take it. Like, you just got to go for it sometimes, and it will always work out. It will always work out. And you're never going to know how when you first take it, but literally it always will. So that's what I think.
I love it. So this has been awesome. I mean, you and I can talk for hours. That's no problem. But I think we've kind of like put some bookends on some really good ideas there. I'll just sort of wrap it up by saying, like, when you felt like you were at your worst and at your hardest, you were crying, maybe on your own. But when things really took off and we found success and you were moving up, I remember you like getting called up to the front of the room. Congratulations. Here's your promotion. Like, when you're winning, you're crying in front of everybody. So like, crying is not necessarily a problem. Getting broken is not necessarily like something to avoid. If anything, that's the stuff that moves you forward. So, I hope that to any of you that are watching this, maybe you picked up on something that just gives you a little bit of fire. Nastasia, you always have extra fire to spare, and it's been something that has honestly really helped me. I get to do a job that I love, and it's so hugely in part because of you and your faith in me and you, how much you pushed me, and the success that I was able to be a part of, being one of your team members. So thank you for this conversation. I kind of expected that you'd get a little fired up because that's when you're at your best. And I can, I say it to you in person, but I'm really grateful for how your passion, your belief in your faith has created success for so many people, myself absolutely included in that. And hopefully this helps some other people as well. You've got a bunch of awesome stuff going on. So get after it. I have no doubt that you'll be successful in whatever you do. Is there anything you want to say to wrap it up, or nope? Cool. So that's it. Thanks so much for joining us. And we'll have more of these conversations, hopefully in the future. So Nastasia, my absolute best boss ever. Thank you so much. And have a great day.